being a Republican in New York City, being a Republican in New York State, being a Republican in general, the war in Iran. My name is Danny, and this is the Digital Disputation. Here in New York City, we have a small contingent of people who are bitter enders, so to speak, of being a Republican in New York. This contingent of people holds steadfast to the notion that if we just can get some more Republican candidates in, we can do something to fix New York. We can show everybody what happens if New York is out of the grip of the DSA control. I'm here to tell you that the Republican Party in New York City and in New York State is a giant grift. That is all it is. And that something else has to be done because the two-party system only works for the DSA and the Democrats, because the Republican Party in New York is part of the uniparty system, the Tammany Hall, and they are the best friends and biggest supporters of the DSA and the Democrats here in New York City and throughout the state. Let's take the example of AOC. Half of AOC's district is a gentrified part of Queens. The other half is the South Bronx, which is one of the poorest zip codes in the United States. Now, you would think that for optics' sake and just for how incredible it would be to get AOC dislodged from her seat, the Republicans would put up a candidate who is capable of actually defeating her and would actually put the effort into trying to defeat her and get her out. And then, with this Republican candidate, he or she could show the rest of New York City what happens if they vote Republican. See, in New York State, it's not about trying to turn Democrats into Republicans. It's about enticing and attracting apathetic voters to a candidate who they sincerely believe will actually help them. And because we only have this two-party system, the only alternative to an AOC or to a DSA candidate is a Republican. And the Republican Party has no interest in getting someone like AOC out. And the reason is because she's a caricature. She is meme fodder. She is someone who they can point at and say, look at the stupid liberal, look at the dumb liberal, look at how dumb she is. And that gives them something to basically meme about and, something to talk about and put on their shows. And it's really just for theatrics, which is, to be honest, what the entire political system in this country has become. Now, for the past couple of years, there's been whispers around New York that they were going to try to put AOC in as a candidate for the presidency. And it was pretty well known that if they were going to do that, they would start off by testing a DSA candidate, a hardcore DSA candidate, in a city like New York, where they could actually use as a battleground to get an understanding of how popular the movement is and what it can get away with. It was pretty well known that a Mamdani-like figure was going to be put in as the DSA candidacy for the Democrat candidacy. And the Republican Party in New York, you would think logically, would say, well, let's find our own young, hip candidate. Let's organize a solid organization to go out and give out pamphlets, to pound the phones, to make a presence. Because that's one thing that DSA is very, very good at. They can organize like that. They have a solid crew in every neighborhood, and they can bring people in from outside to work their cause. And the New York State Republican Party and the New York City Republican Party has no interest in doing any of that because they're not actually trying to win. And when the whispers became out loud discussion of a Mamdani figure becoming the candidate for mayor, that should have been their cue to put somebody good into the Republican candidacy. And what did they do? They put in Curtis Sliwa, who was a dud. And everybody who supported him even knew he was a dud, because we knew he didn't have a chance of winning. But what he became was the anti-establishment candidate, which is why people kind of protest voted for him. Even though he had the best ideas, and he actually talked about something other than Israel and Palestine, he was not getting the backing of the city Republican establishment and the state Republican establishment, who sent everybody to Cuomo, to Andrew Cuomo, who all of a sudden became a Republican hero of sorts. Even though Andrew Cuomo, as governor, not only opened the gates, but rolled out the red carpet for the DSA takeover of the state of New York. I use a lot of car analogies, and Cuomo and Mamdani are like a Ford Taurus and a Mercury Sable. The shape is slightly different, the aesthetics are slightly different, the badge is different, but if you go underneath the hood, the powertrain is exactly the same. The engine, the drive shaft, everything that actually powers the car, just like at Mamdani or Cuomo, exactly the same. And yet the New York State Republican Party and the New York City Republican Party wanted you to vote for him. And that was probably one of the most mind-boggling things I have ever seen. At first, many of them supported Adams, because what they did was they made this entire election on emotionally charged rhetoric. Mamdani's the jihadi, Mamdani the commie, and the entire campaign seemed to revolve around these stupid catchphrases: Israel and Palestine, commie, jihadi, and very few people were actually looking at the candidates themselves and their policies and what they've done in the past. And they made this entire election about emotionally charged rhetoric to get Jews to believe, oh my God, he's going to bring Sharia and jihad to New York. And then to everybody else, they pushed the 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. It was so ridiculous. And it's even more ridiculous that people are still playing into this. But the Republican Party wants you to play into this because Mamdani, just like AOC, is meme fodder, is a caricature. And that's what's most important to them, the theatrics. Knowing that Mamdani was most likely going to win the election, knowing that that the DSA had organized a very solid campaign on the ground for him, the next most logical thing was the city council. If Mamdani's going to win, let's get as many Republican conservatives into the city council to be a counterforce against Mamdani and the remaining DSA. And what did the New York City Republican Party do? They sabotaged every one of their candidates. They put no effort into getting their own people elected. In fact, in one district in Brooklyn, the head of the Brooklyn Republican Party was running for had a primary because he had an opponent, and he decided to commit voter fraud. He decided to have dead people vote in the election for him. Now, unfortunately, one of these voters was very much alive and was very puzzled when he got confirmation that his ballot was received. He said, "I didn't vote in this primary." He contacted the BOE, the Board of Elections. The Board of Elections investigated and found out that the head of the Brooklyn Republican Party committed voter fraud. And he still lost. And instead of saying, okay, well, may the best man win, let's just get a conservative in there, let's get a Republican in there, nope. They sabotaged the candidate every step of the way. And there were at least five, that I can think of off the top of my head, 5 candidates, including a teacher who was fired for refusing to comply with the vaccine mandate, running. And they put no effort into getting her in. They are the best friends. The New York City Republican Party is the best friend that the DSA could have. Even when allegations came out of voter fraud, and I'm not going to get too specific on this, but one DSA candidate got 1,000 write-in ballots for the Working Families Party. Nobody votes in those numbers for the Working Families Party. But did the Republican Party investigate? Did they demand an investigation? Did they demand a recount? Nope. And there's been allegations going back to the Lee Zeldin and Hochul election, where people claimed that voter fraud was committed there too. And the Republican Party in New York did, excuse my French, fuck all to actually stand on any kind of values to protect its candidates and to ensure that there was no voter fraud. They did absolutely nothing. So being a Republican in New York is a futile endeavor. And it goes back to my original point, because that it's about organized labor. And the Republican Party here in New York, whose motto is "A Republican can't win in New York City," does nothing to create outreach. Let's take organized labor. So most of the union bosses, most of the heads of the unions are Democrats and vote for Democratic candidates, no matter how much they screw over the union members. And yet, nobody in the Republican Party has the sense to say, well, wait a minute. Most of the people voting are not voting along their union lines. They're voting Republican. They voted for Trump. Why don't we try to get in there and show them, hey, your union bosses are screwing you guys by continuously voting, supporting these DSA candidates? Nope. The excuse that the Republican Party makes is, well, the unions are all Democrats, so we don't have a chance. Disregard. Disregard the union members. Don't try anything unique. Don't try to get in on that. And it's not just with labor. There is no outreach to minority communities. There is no outreach to the Arab and the Muslim communities in New York, who I think would be a great basis for the Republican Party to go after, to try to entice. Many of them maintain conservative values. But because they want to keep this whole election about Israel and Palestine, they couldn't get off of it. And it was only natural that, as usual, many of the New York City Muslims went for Mamdani. Instead of the Republican Party reaching out to them and saying, listen, if I was running things, I would have said, listen, the mayor of New York has little to no ability whatsoever to make the lives of Israelis or Palestinians better or worse. None. So the fact that the DSA focuses on Palestine, well, we don't live in Palestine. We don't live in Israel. We live in New York City. And that's what they did too to the Jewish voters. They got them all riled up about jihad coming to New York and Sharia. And so everybody voted for their emotions. They didn't vote for candidates based on their policies. They completely forgot the time that we had Andrew Cuomo as governor and the damage he did to this state and the left-wing policies, the DSA anti-gun policies, for example. He was the one who signed in the SAFE Act, which made it harder for New Yorkers to exercise their Second Amendment rights. Everyone just forgot about COVID. The Jewish community in New York, who was tormented by Cuomo during COVID, who he insulted them because it's a community, so they do a lot of communal things, weddings and stuff like that. He basically tore into them and insulted them, and yet they voted for him. Because this wasn't about the better candidate. It was about the emotionally charged rhetoric to keep this political theatrics entertaining. And even now, and since then, there are people who have seemingly forgotten that Eric Adams decimated this city through corruption, through destroying the NYPD, through the COVID mandates, the vaccine mandates, which he still has thousands of city workers who have not been reinstated, through tormenting them through lawsuits and appeals. And yet there are people saying Eric Adams should run again in 2029. It's mind-boggling how Americans have no common sense. Zero. And this is why when Trump decided to go to war with Iran, despite hundreds of sound bites saying he wasn't going to go to war, saying the Democrats have become the war hawks, everybody was surprised but me when he decided to start a war with Iran. Because I know already this is all theatrics. The man who bragged about lowering gas prices, and now oil is going up to over $100 a barrel, and if it goes over $150, it might crash the economy. It'll crash the market. But there are still magatards who justify and condone every action that Trump does, even if it completely violates everything he said previously. And this is the problem in America. This is the problem in a place like New York, where everyone just has goldfish memory, 5-second intervals. We forgot what Adams did. We forgot what Cuomo did. We fall for these childish rhetoric, jihadi, commie, Sharia. And I said to people, let's be logical. Do you really think that Mamdani is going to force his wife and you into a burqa? Do you really think he's going to do that? His mom is Hindu. The Muslim card is not, he's not serious about it. He's not the Muslims, to be honest, I was trying to put out a campaign against him, and I was trying to get Sliwa to do it, but I think Sliwa knew he had no chance. Well, he did. Knew he didn't have a chance. But I wanted to get the New York Republican Party to put out posters and to do an ad campaign that Zoran Mamdani is munafiq, which is the Muslim word for a hypocrite, and call him out on it and turn all those Islamic voters against him, because apparently they weren't seeing him hanging out with transvestites and all this other stuff that goes against Islamic values. So let's put it out there. I made QR codes so people could scan it and see how Mamdani supported and supports putting taxpayer money towards gender reassignment surgery for kids. And they did nothing, because this wasn't about the policies. As my friend's podcast calls it, three-card Mamdani. Whether you're going to vote for Adams, Cuomo, or Mamdani, you are getting the same thing. And when Adams dropped out after embarrassing 13 unions who supported him, it became a Ford Taurus or Mercury Sable, one or the other. Same thing, though. So I don't know what else to tell people if they're not going to come to grips with logic and realize that the only way that we can actually end this political theatrics and create a situation where the politicians are forced onto their knees by the blue-collar middle-class workers through job actions and strikes. I don't know how much more I can tell people and try to get people to understand that militant labor movement is necessary in this city in order to stop and reverse the course that they are taking us on. And if people don't start realizing this, if they don't put down their phones, their stupid distractions, and their cards, and their TikTok, and these other nonsense that they waste all their time on, the sports page. How many people do you meet, blue-collar workers, who know everything about the sports, the players? But when it comes to the politicians that decide their future, nothing. They don't know nothing. This has to change. Because as I always tell everybody from sanitation, even though they allowed me to be fired without due process and without union representation, they are the people like them, people like in the MTA, people in the DOT, teachers, cops, policemen, the blue-collar workers. You are the people that have to wake up. You are the people who are going to have to realize your obligation to protect the future and to ensure that your children inherit a future that is not completely destroyed by your apathy, by the fact that it was more important for you to get back early and play sports and play your cards and watch TV than it was to protect the future that your children will inherit. And if you allow, the future that you allow these sick fucks to create is the future that your children will inherit. And they deserve a middle-class job. They deserve to have the benefits that you had. Years ago, in the 90s, New York City workers took about 3 years or 4 years without a pay raise to protect the benefits for the future, to protect their benefits. A few years ago, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I brought 20 or so protesters to my old union hall to protest what they had done to me. Done to them too, but they don't care. And that happened to be the day that the MLC voted to slash 12-126, which is the city's obligation to cover the health care costs for active and retired New York City employees. And I warned them. I said, they were fighting the retirees at the time, because what they were trying to do is they were trying to get the retirees first, and then it would be pushed on to the actives. I told them, you guys are next. And they've done exactly that. And I warned them, and I begged them to organize, to flex the power of the union. Whether or not your union boss is in support of it, if your union boss is not looking out for you, why are you looking out for him? He gets more than one pension. You get one pension. Just one. And now the health care for the city workers and for the retirees has become a huge mess. And these guys are still just shrugging their shoulders, waiting for some labor messiah to come and save them, instead of organizing and fighting back against the system. Not the Democrat, Republican nonsense. The system, the uniparty, the Tammany Hall that controls New York City and New York State and this country. I wanted to talk a little bit about the war in Iran, but I'm going to save that for another video, and I'll end it with this story. I was in a building recently, and I was talking to one of the porters, one of the maintenance guys, and we were talking about, how that they don't get treated very well by the company that owns the building. And this is, of course, in New York City, so this is a very big company that owns this building. And I said, well, are you unionized? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, let me ask you something. Can this building run without you? And he looks at me and he says, no, they need us. He said to me, one of the CEOs or whatever, board members, went to a new part of the building and went into a room, and he couldn't turn the lights on in the room. And he was frantically calling the porters and the maintenance guys to come up and show him how to turn on a light. The city council members, the Mandani, they can't make the trains run. They can't pick up the garbage. They can't fix the streets. They need you more than you need them. And they need to see that you guys can organize, that you guys can work together, that you guys can be a threat. And as soon as you do that, watch how quickly things change. Watch how quickly you can end careers of politicians. You can dismantle the city government just through the threat, just through the fact that they tried you once, you showed them what you're capable of, and now they fear you. And to all the city workers who are going to watch this, probably not many, because I've tried. And people tell me, give up on these people. But I say, no, I share the world with these people. I want to have, many of these guys have kids, and someday I want to have kids of my own. And I understand the obligation that I have, that I am going to be part of the future, that my children will someday inherit. And my children deserve a middle-class life. They deserve a job that gives them the benefits and a retirement. So I need these guys. You need each other. And if you guys organized and you guys showed them what you're capable of, you could make them tremble. So I'm not going to discuss Iran today. I'll do that in my next episode. I'm sorry for the late video. I've been meaning to put it out. It's just that I've been working a lot, and I was trying to put a few ideas together so I could just quickly record them and put them out, but I've been pretty busy. But I'm back. And I'm back with a message for the blue-collar man, the blue-collar woman. Many of you young guys who are coming into the city work, it's going to be a lot harder for you to own a home the way your predecessors were able to own a home. Buy a house on Staten Island. Buy a house in the suburbs. In Rockland, in Orange, in Westchester. How many of your colleagues drive in every day? Long Island. It's going to be a lot harder for you to get out of the rental box. It's going to be a lot harder for you to retire comfortably the way your predecessors were able to. You now have to pay $9 just to get into New York City, to drive in your own city, and you know damn well they want to expand the congestion charging, which means you guys will be paying to go to your job, something your predecessors didn't have to do. Besides the tolls to come into New York, they didn't have to pay to get around New York City. And they are going to, and Hochul, when she wins, because they didn't even primary and a Republican candidate, they just put in Bruce Blakeman after throwing away Stefanik. They're not putting that much effort into getting Blakeman elected. And he knows it's a lost cause. It's all theatrics. So don't anticipate anything good coming from him. Hochul's going to win this election. And when Hochul and Mamdani win this election, and with the anti-car, anti-middle class, anti-working class DSA that dominates the city government, they will expand congestion charging. They will make it harder for you to live and sustain a comfortable life here in New York. But if you guys work together, if you guys organized, you could have them on their knees. You could make them tremble. The only thing we can start, and the only thing that will end this, is a middle-class revolution. Guys, put down the distractions. Look at the guys next to you. Those are the only people you can rely on. My name is Danny, and this is the Digital Disputation.